What's up everybody, it's Paul from Boosted Films, and in this video we're going to change the engine air filter and cabin air filter in this 2017 Chevy Equinox. So first we're going to start with the engine air filter, and what you want to do is open up your driver's side door, and then kind of where the driver would sit by the driver's side left knee, you will see this pull latch where you would pull to open your hood. So you pull that and your hood should pop open just enough for you to get your fingers in here. So if you are standing in front of the vehicle, you should be able to, again, slide your finger in where that hood popped and left an opening, and then slide your finger in. You'll find this metal piece that holds the hood down yet, and you slide over to the right side, more towards the driver's side. And as you slide it over, it will release enough for you to open up the hood all the way. And then on the left side of the screen here, this is where our air box is, and this air box holds our engine air filter. And there are four screws, I believe, holding this down typically. I think one of them was just missing on this particular vehicle, and it only had three. But these four screws are what holds the top of this air filter box to the bottom of the air filter box, and in the middle is your engine air filter. So what we're going to do, of course, is just remove the screws holding it in place. Flathead screwdriver is probably the easiest thing that should work for you if you have a good screwdriver. Otherwise, it looks like a Phillips design would work, and there's also a specific size socket you could put on here too if you wanted to utilize a ratchet and a socket. But that should be all you need to do to actually get access to your old engine air filter. You should be able to just lift up the top part of your air filter box, lift it up gently with just enough room, lift it up with one hand, reach in with the other hand, and pull out your old engine air filter. And as you can see, this one was a little bit dirty, not too bad, but certainly worth changing. And I always like to compare the old to the new before I try to put it in, just to make sure we got the right part and everything came as it should. This is a rather unique design, I would say, too. It looks, a little bit odd. It's not just a square, just a rectangle like a lot of them typically would be, which will make it easier, of course, to know exactly which way to put this in. But again, we're just going to compare the old to the new, make sure everything looks all right, similar dimensions, similar width, similar height, stuff like that. And as we look into this airbox before we put in our new one, you can see this one still had some leaves and some larger debris in the bottom of it. So you could either vacuum that stuff out or pick it out, pull it out with your hands, get it out of the way. We don't want that clogging up our new air filter right away as soon as we put it in. So anything in there that you see that's kind of some debris, take it out of there and get it out of the airbox. And when it comes back to reinstalling, it's just like when you removed the old one. So you should just lift up the top part of this airbox, and then with the other hand, hopefully free, you should be able to slide in your new air filter. And the air filter should have a bit of a ledge that it would sit on in there. So it should fit in there and then kind of fall into place. And you should see how it kind of sits flat in place like it should. It should sit relatively level, and it should give you enough room for that cover to go back on top and then, hold it in place. So now we're just going to put our screws back in, and I like to get them hand tight first if I can reach my hand in to do so. And then I also like to tighten them up a little bit, kind of one by one, working it slowly a little bit, as opposed to just tightening one up completely all the way. Because sometimes tightening one all the way without starting another one can create a bit of an issue where they either start binding or they're not going in kind of level. So just an extra precaution you can take. It's just an air box. It's just plastic. It's not really a big deal. But it's not a bad practice to have to kind of work things in little by little and just make sure it all feels pretty well when you're tightening it up. And along with tightening these up, they should have a similar tension to them. They should all go in fairly easy, and then once you reach a certain point, they pretty much bottom out, and you can just tell that they are just tight. They get to a point where you're like, yep, that's tight. It doesn't want to go any further. So you should feel that when you go to screw these back in place. And of course, you can take a second look, make sure that the airbox is flat and level, and everything looks like it did before you took it out. And that's it. We'll close our hood, and we have successfully changed our engine air filter. You give your hood an extra push down. You can give it a little wiggle to make sure that it latched all the way as well, if you're nervous about that at all. Next, we're going to move on to our cabin air filter. And what this air filter does is it filters the air that's kind of circulating within your car with your HVAC system in your car. So what we're going to do on this one is start on the passenger side of the car. We're going to open up the passenger door, and then I like to just slide the passenger side seat back a little bit to give me a little more room to work. So we're going to lift that lever up and then slide the seat back on this particular vehicle. And then we're going to open our glove box. So you should just be able to pull that handle to open your glove box. If there's anything inside of it, you probably just want to take that stuff out of your glove box, get it out of the way. And then this is a unique design here where if you look up right in the middle of the glove box, you can see there's just this plastic piece kind of holding it up. And if you lift up the glove box and then use a finger to lift up this plastic piece out of the way, you should be able to then slowly let your glove box down, and then your glove box actually just kind of falls out of place. And this is a pretty nice, pretty easy way to work that. And then you just lift your glove box up a little bit, and it should come up and off these hinges that it's hinging on. A lot of these have more of a squeeze style where you typically squeeze the corners, the outsides of these. This one has just this center piece on the top, and it works pretty nice. And here I'm just pointing out the hinge points where this glove box hinges on right here. So why we remove that is so we can get to this cover here. This cover right here is what keeps our cabin air filter in place. So there's just 2 spots where you kind of push up to release these clips. And then this door swings up, exposing your cabin air filter. This cabin air filter, compared to a lot of the ones I've done in the past, is actually, it's a lot thinner. It's a very thin cabin air filter, which is all right. But then 2, it's a bit tighter of a squeeze, and maybe it's also because that top, that door hinges on the top and doesn't fully come off. Usually these covers would kind of pop all the way off. So this one's kind of in the way a little bit sometimes. And of course, me trying to film myself while doing this, I had limited myself to one hand. So you might want to use one hand to hold that door out of the way while pulling out your old cabin air filter. You could also utilize a screwdriver to get in there to catch part of that cabin air filter, to pull it towards you and pull it out if that's easier for you as well. And a lot like the engine air filter here, what we want to do is just compare the cabin air filter, the new one that came in, and make sure it's not the wrong size or anything like that. So we're just going to take a quick peek. Of course, we're going to take it out of the plastic wrap that it came in. We're going to open it up and compare dimensions, make sure it's a similar width, height, and depth. And of course, this cabin air filter was dirty on top. That also helps. That's a tip for us to know that the airflow direction is down, because it's going to be the dirtiest way the airflow is. And you can see on this one, it does say airflow direction on the side of it. So we're going to want to pay attention to that airflow direction arrow and have it pointing down. And now with this particular one, we're going to look at where it says airflow direction down, and then we got to give it a spin. We're going to give this a bit of a 90-degree spin here before we slide it in, because this does kind of only go in one way since it's not a perfect square. It's more of a rectangular shape. So we're going to give it a turn here and then slide it in. Similar to the removal process, me doing this with one hand made it a bit more complicated probably than it needed to be. But just make sure you hold that door up and out of the way with one hand, and then slide in your new cabin air filter with the other hand. It will only fit one way. It'd be pretty hard to mess this up. If you put it in the wrong way, you should know right away, because it fits really loose, or you would not be able to actually close that door that holds it in place. So again, this one's a bit flimsy, but this cabin air filter, that is, because it's so thin, but you should be able to navigate it in and slide it in place, again, with the airflow direction being down. And now, since that cover is hinged at the top, it's pretty easy to actually just push this back down in place. So you will push it down in place, and you should hear it snap in. And of course, next thing we want to do is take our glove box. You can see a good shot here of where those hinges hook on. And we're just going to line those up and then hook them on. And it should just hold this glove box in place again, once you have them all in place. And then you're simply basically just going to close it. You just lift it up enough and it will go past this extra piece that holds it on the top middle there. And you're done. You can open and close it a few times, make sure it's working like it should, make sure it's on those hinges and everything else. But that will be about it. close your passenger door, put your seat back in its position, and you should be all set. And that's it for this walkthrough. As always, I'm just a guy on YouTube that likes to document things that I do, so it is possible I did something wrong. It is possible that you know a better way to do this, and I would encourage anyone that has some good information or a correction to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Also, if you could, if you have a similar Chevy product or similar different year Equinox or something, let me know if the same process worked for you in your vehicle. That could be helpful to other people watching this video, wanting to know if the same video would work for their particular application. But as always, this is Paul from Boosted Films saying thanks so much for watching.